There are right now 10 teams who are 0-2. Every team on this list is 0-2. These are the 7 teams through 2 weeks who have already been eliminated from the Super Bowl picture. First, the Cleveland Browns, who I believe were the worst team coming into this season. The Cleveland Browns are absolutely done.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Josh Heupel, I mean, please, dude, you got to be kidding me. How do you lose this game at home when you've got Georgia on the ropes with a iffy quarterback at best there in Gunnard, and you somehow figure out a way to lose that game? A game, Donnie, which was pretty much in hand for Notre Dame, 3/4 of it.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season.
Good afternoon. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Major League Baseball's postseason races are heating up. We've got a big change in the standings. We'll get to that. Also, we will discuss the latest ratings in sports television with Simon Applebaum. Sam McQuillan joins us courtesy of Legal Sports Report. Also, Adam Kaufman is in the house with the latest in the National Football League. We, of course, have games beginning back up tomorrow night, so we'll have previews of the NFL games as well, discuss what we've seen thus far. And some big news as the landscape has completely changed in college football with the potential Heisman Trophy favorite missing time. That's where we'll begin today. It was announced yesterday by Brent Venables, the head coach at Oklahoma, that quarterback John Mateer is going to undergo surgery to address a right hand injury that he sustained against Auburn. Incredibly, stayed in the game and had a pretty good game as well. Venables says that Mateer will return to action at some point this season. He was the favorite along with Fernando Mendoza of Indiana. My gosh, have these Heisman Trophy candidates changed? No longer Arch Manning involved, although Jeremiah Smith of Ohio State sits at 11-1. This thing could be upside down over the next month or two. We will see. Major League Baseball also about to make it official. They will be incorporating the new ABS challenge rules next season. So as they say, robot umpires are coming in 2026. Each team will get 2 challenges, and they can keep them if they're successful. The challenges can only be initiated by a pitcher, a catcher, a batter, and the request must come right after the pitch. To signal a challenge, the pitcher, catcher, or batter's got to tap his helmet to let the umpire know, and no help from the dugout can happen. By the way, they've tested this out very successfully at the minor league level and also at the Arizona Fall League. The Pittsburgh Steelers are headed on the road this week. In fact, they're headed to Ireland. First international game of the season is this Sunday morning. And of course, this is the first time we're going to see the Steelers travel internationally in a long time. Mike Tomlin talked about the challenges of preparing for a game that is overseas.
You know, it's been a long time for me individually, and that's kind of what I was referring to. There's been a lot of organizations since then that travel, and I just think procedurally is less mystical. I think procedures are more global. There's more shared information about how to best pull off these trips. We have that information. The Vikings have that information. I think it's, you know, less of a discussion topic. And today, in today's game as it was maybe in 2014 or whatever year that was that we went to London.
Mike, how do some of the injury recoveries work with the international travel and playing on a different field?
I don't expect it to be significant in any of those discussions.
Liam Cohen of the Jacksonville Jaguars back at the podium this week. Jaguars have a tough matchup against the undefeated San Francisco 49ers. One team's going to feel a lot better about their season after they play this Sunday. Here's Cohen on the matchup and just how well coached the Niners are.
His clubs will present.
Yeah, very well coached in all three phases. Offensively, very detailed, the wide zone, mix it with some gap and perimeter. And then, the just the illusion of the run with the formations and the keepers, the boots and the play pass is all pretty clean. They've done a nice job. I have a ton of respect for Kyle, obviously offensively, but also as a coach and what he's been able to do there in San Fran, playing against those guys for so long, being in LA. So defensively, they fly around. There's a huge clear distinction in terms of the way that they play, very similar to the defense we just played, in the way that they attack, the way that they run to the football, the way that Fred tries to take the ball away, right? And then on special teams, very well coached. Brant Boyer's been an NFL special teams coach for a long time. And you can see that the way that they play on teams, very similar to the way that they play on defense, and very similar to the way that they try to run the ball and impose their will physically on offense. So a lot of respect.
Micah Parsons, about to say hello to his old friends with the Dallas Cowboys, says it's going to be painful on getting ready to sack Dak Prescott coming this week. Dallas is not playing good football. Also, the Texans have released C.J. Gardner-Johnson after just 3 games. Of course, has had a nice NFL career, but appears to be coming to an end. Major League Baseball's postseason race is not coming to an end anytime soon. In fact, we have several days to go, and it feels like a lot to decide. The Cleveland Guardians were 15 and a half games back on July 8th, and they're now in first place in the Central. How about that? 3 runs in the 6th inning. They end up beating Tariq Skubal and the Detroit Tigers, and so now the Guardians are basically in the prime position because they hold the tiebreaker against the Tigers and have a chance now to win the division. Incredible comeback for them. They played the best baseball of anyone in September. Here is Stephen Kwan on facing off with Tariq Skubal and having success.
Yeah, I mean, his first 5 were pretty dominant. He's putting it where he wanted to. He's getting up to 100. So just try to mix it up a little bit, kind of get the defense moving around. Yeah, it was funny too. Me and Angel didn't talk about back-to-back bunts. So I would drop one down. I wasn't even ready for his, and he put a great one down. So yeah, just trying to get him off his normal cadence and just, try to create some chaos.
I mean, we're doing a lot of uncharacteristic things, and it's hurting us. So it's a tough game. When we didn't capitalize early, you always look back and wonder if the game could have separated a little bit more. I thought we were in a good place when Riley hit the homer. But they showed that the team that made the most contact got rewarded for it, even if it wasn't great contact. They did a good job of battling.
The New York Mets struggling in the month of September, but seemingly they were able to pull one out last night when they needed it most, thanks to Francisco Alvarez. He had a 2-run home run last night to defeat the Chicago Cubs 9-7. The Mets trailed 5-1 in this game and came back to win. Here's Carlos Mendoza on the gutty effort.
Describe what a lift that was that Alvarez gave you.
Yeah, I mean, huge, big hit right there. But obviously we're talking about that one in the 8th, but man, like overall, that named 3-run homer just to tie the game, but just the at bats once you get down 6-1. But the guys battle back and 2 big swings right there by Nim and obviously the one from Alvi needed that one.
Peterson, just how deflating is that for him to go out there and give you that?
Yeah, tough night for him. Not able to fill the strike zone the way we wanted to, the way he wanted to. Got behind in hitters, and then when he came in, they made contact and they hit some balls hard at him. That found holes. The walks. But again, we're gonna need this guy. I know it's been a struggle. It wasn't a good one today, but our job is to continue to support him, and he's gonna play a big role here in the next few days. So counting on him, you got to flush this one, and then be ready for whenever we give him the ball again.
When you say big role in the next few days, that means bullpen maybe?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, where are we at nowadays? Like, we got to take it one day at a time. Maybe he starts a game, but he's just we got to get there. So.
Day by day for the Mets, and the Yankees took it day by day over the last few. They end up getting into the postseason yet again. They still can win the division over the Blue Jays, but for now, they're in the playoffs. They beat the White Sox 3-2 yesterday. Also, Red Sox bullpen pitches 4.1 innings of hitless baseball. They beat the Blue Jays 4-1, so the Jays hold a one-game lead over the Yankees. Red Sox also in the catbird seat to get that wild card as well. That's the latest in baseball. Also, 4:10 Eastern today, first game of consequence in the postseason chase. We've got the Brewers taking on the Padres. Some jockeying for position could occur, but beyond that, that's the only afternoon game to pay attention to that has postseason applications. We'll take a quick time out here on NewsWire. When we come back next, we'll check in with Michael DeCourcy of Sporting News to get the landscape of the National Football League. You're watching NewsWire on SportsGrid, midweek edition, and we'll be back right after this. So make sure you stay on the grid. Don't go away.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
And I'll tell you, there are a lot of happy faces at Prime Video and its parent company, Amazon. The first Thursday Night Football game of their season was this past Thursday, and they got 17 million plus. And that is the best viewership they have had in the run of TNF. More than that, the internet and social media response to it was terrific. A lot of people felt that Al Michaels and Curb Street have now really come into their own as a play-by-play team.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Credit to the Giants, who were so good in April and then since then just kind of fell apart. Now they're back in it again. I think the Mets will get in, but it is fascinating that they'll play the Marlins here the last 3 games of the season. And I know without a doubt that the Marlins are going to line up Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, and top guys to try and beat the Mets.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
Michael DeCourcy is with us from Sporting News to go over the landscape of the National Football League as we head into the end of the month of September. Mike is here with us. Of course, there's a game tomorrow night, but before we get to tomorrow night, let's take a look back at what has happened thus far. Mike, thanks for coming on NewsWire, of course. And, I kind of find it funny that everyone is like, this week is when the Colts are going to get tested and we're going to find out. I mean, Mike, this is ridiculous talk in this day and age of the NFL. The Colts are 3-0. If they just win as many as they lose the rest of the season, the Colts are going to make the playoffs. They'd be very happy with that. I understand they only beat the Dolphins and Titans, and those games were and they probably should have lost against Denver, but the record is what it is. And the Colts don't even have to play that well to be happy with the results at the end of the season. So I don't understand what this testing is all about.
Yeah, and I look at it also as look at the rest of the AFC South. I mean, what scares you there? Jacksonville's been okay, I guess, but Houston's a mess, and they certainly have the capacity, the talent, one would assume, based on their previous 2 years, to dig themselves out of it. But they are a mess. I mean, you talk about the Steelers being 2-1 and kind of a mess, but it's a lot better to be a 2-1 mess than an 0-3 mess. Let's put it that way.
Right.
I think it's certainly a much greater challenge to go to LA and play a really good Rams team on the road than to play Denver at home. Yeah, I agree with that. But I think it says a lot about what is truly behind Indianapolis's surge, that they're only 3.5-point dogs on the road to a Rams team that had the Super Bowl champions beaten until they managed to foul up a field goal attempt. So I think there's a lot to like about this Colts squad, starting with Jonathan Taylor, the only back in the league averaging more than 100 yards a game. And then the great play to this point of the player we used to call Danny Dimes, now we call him Indiana Jones. Daniel Jones has been outstanding at quarterback for the Colts.
Yeah, 6 total touchdowns on the season. And the only, I would say, increase in love for Indiana Jones would be the MVP. And that's not really in the conversation right now. He'd have to win this game this week in order to legitimately be in that conversation. But he is a little bit on the outside looking in, so it is fascinating. You mentioned the Rams are 3.5-point favorites with a total of 49.5. And so it seems to be that the line is stuck on 3.5 here. I don't see this going to 3 by the end of the week. In fact, it may go to 4 a little bit if some money comes in on the Rams. Would you back the Colts in this spot, or is this just one of those where, the Rams are just really upset after what happened last week? It's just like one team I don't want to play this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the NFL, we usually get that little bit of regression to the mean. And I'm not saying the mean for the Colts is that they're going to consistently lose the rest of the year, but I also don't think it's likely that they're going to be undefeated. So going on the road, playing a team that obviously let a game get away that against a great team that they had won, and I think they're going to feel in their division with Seattle playing pretty well. I think they're going to feel like they need to get this. You can't afford to lose a home game against a team like the Colts at this stage and feel good about where your season is headed. So I kind of like the Rams only having to lay 3.5 in this situation. But as I said, it is a measure of great respect for the Colts. That's all the line is. And then the question, when I say I kind of like the Rams, the one question that we have about them right now through 3 games, have about LA, is they haven't been superior against the run, and now they're facing the best rushing attack in the league. So can they stand up against that? I think that's the question that would maybe dissuade me a little bit from going on the Rams. But I still, like I said, I kind of like that 3.5 margin, only having to give that much against a road team coming in, feeling pretty good about itself and maybe ready to take 1 L.
Now, your Steelers, Mike, I'm it's like a mixed bag for me at this point this week. And I think this week will get more of a determination in particular as to who they are, a little bit different than the Colts, because that win against the Jets, I give them all the credit in the world offensively, but that was the Aaron Rodgers game. And since then, it's kind of gone back to what we saw at the beginning of the season with the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. They lose to the Seahawks 31-17. They did beat the Patriots last week, but I mean, look, you give them credit, but the Patriots just kept fumbling the ball and throwing picks, and this game is really a lot closer than 7 points. And so, Mike, I suppose this week when they play the Vikings, who I think are a little bit overrated, by the way, I'm actually shocked that they're favored going into this game. We didn't get a chance to see Carson Wentz at all because they didn't need him. Bengals just kept giving them the ball constantly, too. So good litmus test for both teams, 9:30 a.m. Sunday morning, Vikings and Steelers in Dublin.
Yeah, I don't like to go on a game like this at all because you just don't know who's going to be affected by travel and who's not. But as far as the Steelers are concerned, the one thing that they can look at is as I mentioned before, they can say we're terrible, but we're 2-1. We got a lot to fix. It may be fixable. They have essentially two rookie offensive tackles. One who played about half a game last year on the right side, Faltanu. And on the left side, you have Broderick Jones, who's played 2 years, but both as a right tackle and now is in his fourth game as a left tackle. So you've got two rookies there. You've got a second-year guy at right guard and a second-year guy at center and one veteran. That's your offensive line, and it's played like a bunch of rookies to this point. It's got to get better, Craig. People talk about Aaron Rodgers getting killed and all that stuff. It's not about that. He doesn't have any time to throw, and that's what it's about. I'm not worried about Aaron Rodgers' health. I'm worried about, does he have time to throw and make this offense effective? And also, because they don't block the run either, they don't have the threat of the run to keep the rush away from Rodgers. So the offensive line has got to improve. If it doesn't, it doesn't really matter what the record is now. It won't be sufficient at the end of the year.
Yeah, and the creating turnovers is not something generally sustainable. Their defense has also been getting torched a little bit by other teams, but they've buckled down in the red zone as usual. All right, a minute to go. Mike, I know that this was probably the right decision to start Jackson Dart, but I am really concerned here. I don't know. Like, it seems to me these next 5 games that they play, they may lose them all potentially here. I'm a little worried.
This is what happens, Craig, when you bring back a head coach who has not been successful and then hand him a first-round quarterback. It's the worst scenario because he feels pressure to start the guy to save his job, but it's not good for rookies to be full-time starters. The track record just is not great.
Agreed. Thanks, Mike, for coming on.
Sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
I would say a phenomenal year for the UConn graduate, as Paige Beckers could have came out last year to the WNBA, and she decided to come out this year. It would have been interesting if it would have been Paige or Caitlin Clark. I don't think it would have been as slam dunk as people think to go to Caitlin Clark.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Some prime matchups in college football. If you missed our show yesterday, we ended up hearing from Kirby Smart of Georgia and Brian Kelly of LSU, and also James Franklin of Penn State. So today we're going to flip the script. We're going to hear from the other coaches involved in those games. Kalen DeBoer, the head coach at Alabama, Lane Kiffin, the head coach at Ole Miss, and Dan Lanning at Oregon. These are 3 games with huge college football playoff implications. In fact, all 6 teams ranked in the top 25. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound-Off. Generally, this is always one of the top college football matchups of the year. It's lost a little bit of luster because Alabama lost their first game of the season, but things can change quickly, especially if the Crimson Tide were to go into Athens and pick up a win. In fact, they could probably flip their spots in the top 25 if that ends up happening. Let's start off with Kalen DeBoer. This is the matchup that they need to win to stay alive in the college football playoff picture. And DeBoer seemingly ready for the big challenge to go into Athens.
I think overall just excited about the week upcoming. The preparation, getting ready for a very good Georgia team, one that's undefeated, going to Athens, Georgia. Going to be a great atmosphere, great environment. Something our guys are looking forward to. You can tell just with the way we've had practices here at the end of last week, yesterday, just high energy and looking forward to the challenge. Yeah, I mean, not every game, but a lot of these games that you have in the SEC come down to one possession, and going into the fourth quarter. And when you have games that are that close, it's a play here, play there that keeps the drive alive. A lot of times it comes down to penalties. Obviously, there's an execution piece that is really important throughout the game, but you don't know when that penalty is. Is it the one that extends the drive in the first quarter, the fourth quarter? You got to be able to be focused and be disciplined for 4 quarters and more if needed.
If that's not one of the best games on the slate, maybe you enjoy this one. LSU will travel to Mississippi, which is always a tough place to play in the Southeastern Conference. We know how solid Lane Kiffin's offense has been this season, shuffling 2 different quarterbacks in and out and averaging over 30 points a game. But now the challenge is up against LSU's very tough defense. Kiffin talked about the differences in the defense for the Tigers last year versus this year.
Lane, LSU's defense was pretty good last year. It seems like it's really taken a step up this year. I guess from your perspective, is it them being more comfortable in the scheme? Is it personnel additions? Well, what's kind of stuck out to you about that group?
Well, I think second year in a system defensively helps a lot of times. And they've improved their personnel also. You got 3 of the 4 starting D linemen are portal guys. 3 of the 4 secondary D-line are portal guys. So they've done a great job with that. They've heavily financially invested into the portal and made that decision. That's no secret. Coach Kelly's talked about that, how much money they've spent, and it shows. Those are 3 guys that were heavily recruited and probably the 3 most expensive portal DBs in the market, and they got them all. So they did a great job with that, and now they're coaching them really well, and they're playing great.
So far, so good for LSU. They're ranked 4th, and Ole Miss ranked 13th going into this matchup. All right, 2 teams ranked inside the top 10. Penn State, number 3 against Oregon. Of course, there'll be a spirited crowd. Always they do this white out where all the fans are wearing white in Penn State on Saturday night. Dan Lanning knows that's a very big challenge heading to Beaver Stadium to have to overcome that atmosphere.
Certainly excited for this one. I know you guys have been thinking about this one for a long time, and now we finally can focus on it as well. I mean, Penn State is extremely talented team. They do it well in all 3 phases. Coach Franklin runs a great organization, and they present a ton of challenges. I've said it before, but defensively, there's multiple and disruptive as anybody will play. They got great edge play. Denai Dennis Sutton's one of the better defensive edge players in the league. And in the nation, they've got good play in the back end as well. They do a great job overlapping and have a lot of variety of schemes. Offensively, they're really tough to prepare for because they're moving almost every play. So it just presents a really challenge, just the shifts and movements and motions that they do, and have great running backs, good quarterback, and their wide receiver play is really stands out this year. They have some speed on the field, and then special teams are really sound. So excited for that environment. It's one that I haven't been to before, but I've heard a lot about.
Coming up next here on the show, we'll dive into the latest in sports betting and see if the state of Nebraska can get things going, and also talk about the prediction markets. A new company is jumping on board. Sam McQuillan will join us courtesy of Legal Sports Report. Also, you can download the SportsGrid app simply by taking out your phone and scanning this QR code. It's available for both iOS and Android. You can track all your bets on the app and also find out more about our programming, including this weekend and every weekend as we head toward college football and pro football and next week's baseball postseason. We'll be back with Sam right after this.
sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
I would say a phenomenal year for the UConn graduate, as Paige Beckers could have came out last year to the WNBA. And she decided to come out this year. It would have been interesting if it would have been Paige or Caitlin Clark. I don't think it would have been as slam dunk as people think to go to Caitlin Clark.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to have Sam Aquila with us from Legal Sports Report. We will have an update on the prediction markets. It looks like another company is getting involved, and why not? Until they say you can't do it, might as well have everybody do it. Maybe we should even do it here at SportsGrid. All right, but let's get started here, Sam. Great to have you back here on NewsWire. I know Nebraska, you're able, if I'm not mistaken, you're able to make bets at certain places in Nebraska, but they've been trying to fight to get things online now for a couple of years. And at least this is going to go to a vote, which tells me there could be a change coming next year, potentially.
Yeah, Nebraska is one of 20 states that doesn't have online sports betting. It does have legal in-person sports betting, but that's limited to only a few of the state's casinos. So there's this one tribal group that this week came out and announced that they're going to start collecting signatures to bring this issue to the ballot next year. So it's this Native American group called the Winnebago Tribe of Nebraska. They own casinos in Lincoln and Omaha called the War Horse Casinos, and they really want to, bring this online so it's not just legal in person. So they can, get an app and join the other almost 40 states that have done online sports betting so far. Lawmakers estimate it would raise about $32 million in tax revenue. So there's a lot of support for it. Of course, there's always opposition against it. Folks are concerned about addiction issues, particularly with young men in the state. The tribe will start gathering signatures about next month or so, I'm told. They need 125,000 in order to bring it to the ballot because it's a constitutional amendment, which requires about 10% of signatures from all registered voters in the state. So it's going to start picking up over the next couple of months or so. The governor is in favor of online sports betting, which is always, good for your prospects, but it's been the lawmakers in the state legislature where it's been held up. There was a push to legalize it last year, also via a constitutional amendment in the legislature. That bill passed the first committee, but because it's amending the state's constitution, it required 2/3 majority from the entire chamber, which it ultimately never got. It was filibustered by opponents and was not moved forward in the session. Now that bill still is alive technically for next session. So there is also the option, if it isn't legalized on the ballot via voter referendum, it could signal momentum moving forward in the state house as well. So we'll have to see what happens in Nebraska, but it's one of those few states right now where things are looking up if you're trending towards sports betting. There was about 4 million attempts last year in Nebraska to access legal sports books, according to GeoComply. So there's definitely an appetite for it in the state. The question now is just, can we get those signatures and can lawmakers finally get on board with it?
Yeah, it should be. I think a couple of states got to get online here eventually and not just have the in-person sports betting. All right, so what's going faster than legalizing sports betting is the unregulated prediction market world, where everybody seems to want a piece of the pie. Sam, who is the latest operator in the space that wants to open up some money and some customers to online prediction market, not bets, but prediction market wagers? I mean, what do you even say? Selections? Okay, prediction market selections.
Yeah, it's telling itself. It's just kind of a head scratcher or a tongue twister to kind of figure out what to call them. This basically is sports betting, but not sports betting. Prize Picks is the latest company that is getting into this space that others already, like Underdog, a fellow fantasy sports operator, as well as Kalshi, obviously, have gotten into these prediction markets, which are available in all 50 states, allowing people to buy contracts on the outcomes of things. This is the first year, really, where the opportunity to buy contracts on outcomes has been extended to sporting events, which has created a whole mess of regulatory pushback and disagreement over what's sports betting and what's not. But Prize Picks just this week made a major move, filing with the National Futures Association on Monday to be granted for a Futures Commission merchant license, which will allow it to do these prediction markets, although it hasn't said when it's going to start doing them. One important thing to note here is that Prize Picks has not publicly said that they're going to be doing sports specifically. If you remember, Kalshi and Robinhood and all these other companies started getting into predictions pretty much around the election, allowing events to bet on like the weather, the Oscars, other kind of novelty things out here. So Prize Picks has not come out and specifically said it will go into sports. Now that's obviously what they're positioning themselves for. FanDuel has made a similar move, also saying that they're not going to do sports, at least at the start, and DraftKings is reportedly taking similar steps. But all companies have been kind of careful so far not to say we're going to do sports because you've had a number of states so far push back where these companies are licensed. You've had Arizona recently, you've had Maryland, you've had Ohio say that, if you start offering what we essentially deem is unlicensed illegal sports betting in other markets, that could jeopardize your licenses in this state. Prize Picks is probably the biggest daily fantasy sports operator around there. They have their popular pick'em games, which are very close or similar to parlays, and that's been a huge boon for their business. So it's a little bit of a chess game right now, kind of waiting to see what happens with the CFTC, whether they're ever going to come down and regulate on it. A new commissioner is supposedly being considered now that the current nominee is kind of falling out of favor with the administration. That commissioner or supposed commissioner also has ties to Kalshi, so they'd also be favorable here. So this is just kind of another sign of a company taking a major step while it still waits to fully dip its toes in the pool of this whole prediction market business.
Yeah, definitely so. And Prize Picks also making some news as far as some leadership is concerned. Does this have anything to do with the prediction markets?
I would say it's definitely not a coincidence that on the same day that Prize Picks announced that they're going to do prediction markets, they also announced they're selling the majority stake in their company, 62%, to this European lottery company called Alwyn, which gets them $1.6 billion in cash. That's how much the sale was for. And it values Prize Picks at $2.5 billion, which is pretty interesting. That's more than Kalshi has been valued at. That's more than Underdog. So it's getting this huge valuation at this time that it's announcing that it wants to go beyond pick'em daily fantasy sports and beyond sports betting even. So there's a number of incentives in the deal as well that could make this go up to $4 billion by 2029. Prize Picks in the meantime will continue to be run independently by its CEO, Mike Ybarra, as well as the founder, Adam Wexler. But it's now under this umbrella of this larger European lottery company, which gives it a lot more kind of financial reach. This is a company that owns the company that runs the UK lottery. They own the company that runs the Illinois lottery, as well as a lot of different sports betting operations across Europe. So it gives this kind of heft to Prize Picks' company. It also gave us the first opportunity to look at what they're really doing. We saw that they grew revenue 60% last year and has registered over 20 million users, which is quite a lot of people in the sports betting and fantasy sports space. So Prize Picks continues to grow. And in the meantime, they get a huge billion-dollar figure out of this sale. And we'll see what happens with their prediction markets.
Yeah, and I think, Sam, just from reading through the tea leaves here, from all the reporting from you folks over at Legal Sports Report and even across the country, is it does seem like at some point the regulatory commission is going to get involved. But the longer this goes, it gives these companies chances to prove that they can operate. So therefore, maybe even if they do get shut down for a period of time, if they have success, maybe they could pop back in when it does become legal. And that just, at the very least, will give people an opportunity to try them out until it does become that. So they're sort of getting ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that assessment, Craig. And beyond that, it gets people registered onto these platforms. What happens eventually one day if we have the CFTC or whoever is figured out to be in charge of it come out and say, yeah, this stuff actually is illegal, but we weren't doing anything about it, so you're okay. These companies already have all these users in all these states. This is an opportunity for Prize Picks to reach more users in states before sports betting is legalized, an opportunity for FanDuel to do the same. So not only are they benefiting from it now, they also build up their base, and you're seeing these valuations boom in the meantime while the CFTC just kind of waits back and doesn't do much, at least so far right now. So yeah, it's definitely just kind of a no-brainer for them.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Sam, great stuff. We'll read more over at LegalSportsReport.com. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire today. We'll catch up with you again on Friday.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Craig.
All right, Sam McQuillan with us from Legal Sports Report. Up next, Simon Applebaum joins us from the podcast Tomorrow Will Be Televised. The Masters makes a big announcement about their future broadcast. And did he catch CBS's broadcast for the NFL today? We'll tell you more next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
I would say phenomenal year for the UConn graduate, as Paige Beckers could have came out last year to the WNBA, and she decided to come out this year. It would have been interesting if it would have been Paige or Caitlin Clark. I don't think it would have been as slam dunk as people think to go to Caitlin Clark.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid. It's the most beautiful time of the year. No, not because of foliage or pumpkin spice lattes. It's because of football. SportsGrid has you covered all season long, covering every snap, every score, and every line move. Prepare, watch, win. Weekends are for winners. Only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We got Simon Applebaum in the house from the podcast Tomorrow Will Be Televised for the very latest on sports and streaming and everything else in the middle. Simon, great to have you back here on NewsWire. Some big news here in the world of the Masters. And another streaming service is jumping right in to take away one of the biggest events from another over-the-air broadcaster. Who is it, and what is the Masters doing here?
It is Amazon, Craig, and great back with you. And by the way, happy Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year to all of our Jewish viewers. Yes, this came out of the blue. If you know the Augusta National Golf Club, you know they don't make decisions lightly. And this is one that came out of nowhere. Amazon Prime Video next year is going to carry early round coverage of the Masters from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time on both Thursday and Friday. They will lead into ESPN's coverage, and then CBS has the highlights at around 11:30 after late local news. And then on Saturday and Sunday, Paramount Plus, which of course is part of Paramount along with CBS, they will have 2 hours of early afternoon coverage from noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and then CBS carries the rest of the way to about 7 o'clock or the conclusion of the round. This is huge for Amazon because bit by bit by bit, they are becoming more of a major sports player. Thursday Night Football has done very well for them this year so far. They're averaging about 17 million viewers a pop through 2 games. They've got the NBA starting on their service next month, WNBA next year. And speaking of football, 2 other important notes. One, Amazon may be able to get more football earlier than they think, because if you didn't see Quark's Box on CNBC this morning, Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, made it very clear he wants to renegotiate all of the NFL TV contracts as early as next year. That's about 3 years earlier than what was initially thought about. They would opt out of the current contracts. Now, Amazon, by the way, has to approve that opportunity to renegotiate, along with CBS and Paramount Plus, along with NBC and Peacock, along with Disney and ESPN. But given the fact that Amazon is doing so well, the YouTube, by the way, game did very well, about 19 million viewers worldwide, and Netflix has the game day on Christmas Day, and they may want more. You might see Roger Goodell really push very, very hard to get these contracts renegotiated. One more Amazon note. Marshawn Lynch, the former NFL superstar, he is going to become the star of his own comedy series on Prime Video. It's all going to be about a former NFL star. Yes, he plays a former NFL star who gets into private investigation work in Las Vegas. The showrunner of Dave, the popular FX series of several years ago, he's going to be involved in making the show. And I think Marshawn Lynch, given his personality, I think it could fly. So Amazon being more and more involved in the National Football League. And don't forget, next month, the Saquon Barkley docuseries. That'll be coming up on Prime Video next month.
Yeah, Simon, I thought a fun broadcast for the NFL Today on CBS, everybody getting dressed up like it was a quarter century ago. I thought in particular they did a really good job with the presentation of it, not taking away from the games themselves.
They did, Craig. Bravo to CBS. They really gave the right balance of finding out about the games, but also paying tribute to really the show and really the way that CBS introduced the idea of a comprehensive, cohesive way to watch the NFL. Pre-game, halftime, post-game. When you saw the beginning with Brent Musburger saying, "You are looking live at blank field and such," it was like you were going back to the late 1970s when the NFL Today started. Yes, James Brown with the afro, everybody else doing their thing. You also went to the game sites, Iron Eagle with the mustache with J.J. Watt. Some of the teams, in fact, during the games wore throwback uniforms to the days of the late 1970s. It was very, very well done, and a great tribute to everybody who put together the NFL Today, which has really become the transformational move to what we now see on television, where you have, NBA games that were on TNT, pregame, halftime, postgame, college football, Fox NFL Sunday, what they do with the NFL. It really was one of the great milestone, the beginning of that almost 50 years ago. That was one of the great milestone moments in sports television.
Let's get to the WNBA as they're closing out their season as the NBA preseason gets ready to begin, Simon. So we've got the playoffs. The first round, it's on ABC and ESPN. I know last year the ratings were up tremendously. Where do they stand this year?
Down from a year ago, still okay when you give them the fact that, for example, the Indiana Fever doing so great with Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham out. 943,000 people watched, on average, the first-round games on ABC or ESPN or ESPN2. Now, you got to remember that the first day of the 4-round was 4 games, all on Sunday afternoon up against the NFL. So when you consider that the NFL really bit into those first-round games, that's not too bad. WNBA Countdown, by the way, actually their viewership, that's their pregame show, was up about 4% from a year ago. And one of the games in the first round, the Atlanta Dream Indiana Fever game, had 1.5 million people. And that series alone averaged 1.1 million. So even though it was down from a year ago and one of the big stars, Caitlin Clark, was out, not too bad for this playoff season for the NBA so far. And don't forget, we're in the semifinal round now.
Now, BetMGM's The Price is Right pricing game is kicking off the 54th CBS season. Of course, everybody certainly watched The Price is Right at one time or another, but tell us more about this partnership here.
Well, season 54 started this past Monday. I had a chance to see it. It's the brand new pricing game, The Lion's Share. BetMGM sponsoring. They may have had a role to play in developing it. The way it works is simple this. Keston goes on stage, gets into a win machine, has an opportunity like Plinko, gets 1 ball for free, has a chance to win up to 4 more balls in a true or false pricing game. There are 40 balls in all. 35 of the balls are prizes. 5 of them are $100,000 in cash. There are also 5 what they call lose-it-all balls. After you have 30 seconds to get 5 balls or up to 5 balls, threw them in a chute. It goes on a game board with all 40. You then pick which ones you want in what order. If you get a prize, you get the prize. However, if you get a lose-it-all ball at any time, you lose the prize up to that point. However, let's say if you get 3 prizes and the 4th prize lose-it-all, you still have a chance, if you want, to go on and try to win a prize. The person who was the contestant on Monday's show won $35,000 in prizes. John Quinn, the new executive producer of The Price is Right, will be on my tomorrow televised program next Monday, and we'll ask him about how it did with BetMGM, the role BetMGM had in it, and also, given the Fremantle, the people doing The Price is Right, have a deal with BetMGM, you might see next year this become an online casino game, and maybe even a game you might play on your smart TV set.
That's excellent stuff as always, Simon. We'll check out the podcast. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire. Have a great rest of your week.
You too, Craig. All the greatest.
Simon Applebaum with us on the podcast. Tomorrow will be televised, which you can download wherever you stream your podcast. Coming up next, we'll check in on Major League Baseball's decision to hit the button for robot umpires next year. Our friends at Front Office Sports weigh in next. Credit to the Giants, who were so good in April and then since then just kind of fell apart. Now they're back in it again. I think the Mets will get in, but it is fascinating that they'll play the Marlins here the last 3 games of the season. And I know without a doubt that the Marlins are going to line up Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, and top guys to try and beat the Mets.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
It is the biggest story in sports. It is the ability to predict outcomes in sports without calling it sports betting. But I guess Massachusetts doesn't like it very much, and they're saying basically you can't operate in our market without having a license like FanDuel and DraftKings. And they're coming at this company, Robinhood, who you may be familiar with. Robinhood right now says, hey, we should be able to operate just like these other companies.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The biggest games, the biggest bets that you need to know. So much fun already, Joe. I feel like we got a good lot of information now.
Yeah. Good games, not great, but again, it's college football. You can bet on them, nothing better.
Bet it, win it. By the way, and I always like to say this, and it's true. Like, you can have the worst game in the world. You cash your ticket, it's like a Picasso. Like, that game was the best game I ever watched in my life.
Are you kidding? Especially when you're hitting parlays.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. A big announcement coming yesterday as Major League Baseball has decided it is time to put balls and strikes not just in the hands of the umpires, but also the robot umpires, as they say. The ABS system is now officially in place starting next season. Now, keep in mind, they're not just throwing this out there. They have used this at the Arizona Fall League, and they've also used it at different levels of the minor leagues as well. So how does it work? Basically, you're able to challenge balls and strikes by tapping on your helmet. The catcher can do this. The batter can do this as well. The key to this is not to slow down the game, and the way that they're going to avoid doing that, so they say, is by not allowing this to come from the dugout. So you can't like look back at video or think about it. You immediately have to challenge it, and a couple of times per game. And you know, the thing is that you have to wonder what the end of the games are going to look like if you don't use your challenges early in the games. And will teams try to abuse this? I'm not really sure. I certainly hope not. But the final week of the regular season in Major League Baseball is officially here, and man, do we have some incredible postseason races. So many teams are still heavily involved and still in the race. In fact, the Cleveland Guardians, for the first time all season, moved into first place as they tied the Detroit Tigers in the Central. Here's more from our friends at Front Office Sports.
While we are also waiting for details around what's going to be next for Tampa Bay, we're also trying to figure out what's going to be next for the Major League Baseball playoff picture, because it's been insane. Now, we saw the Padres clinch Monday. We know that there's been a race to the finish, whether it's the Detroit Tigers blowing a 15.5-game lead, the Guardians catching people by surprise, the Mets, who have the second highest payroll across the league, having one of the worst records since June and worst ERAs, and just completely plummeting. So right now, Eric, it feels like payroll doesn't matter. Throw it out the window. High payroll, low payroll doesn't seem to truly impact playoff implications. What are your thoughts on how this season paints that picture for us?
Yeah, it is interesting because we've got the two lower payroll teams from Ohio, the Reds and the Guardians, both trying to crash the party. As we're taping this in the National League, there are three teams going for that final sixth slot, the Reds, the Mets, and the Diamondbacks. And one of those teams is not like the other in terms of payroll, with the Mets being so far ahead and second in the league behind only the Dodgers. In the American League, it's four teams going for three slots. The Blue Jays are the only one that have formally clinched, but the Yankees and the Mariners are pretty much there. So for the final three slots, we've got ostensibly a race between the Tigers, the Guardians, the Red Sox, and the Astros. And one of those four teams is not going to make it. And that's a mix of teams payroll-wise. But again, the Guardians at number 25, are really kind of unlike those others. And you sort of pull back, with the Yankees and the Dodgers, those two big market, big spending teams that were in the World Series last year, both weaker than they were last year. It does seem a little bit more of an even playing field, at least competitively on the field.
Well, let's talk about the Dodgers, because they could clinch the NL Central this week, but they did finish.
The NL West.
Yes, true. Yes, but they did clinch a franchise record of over 4 million people that came to watch Dodgers games. That passes numbers from the Mets and Yankees in 2008. But Eric, why might this be sort of the last time we see this number for a while?
Yeah, so there's only one stadium in the entire league that can even get to this number from a capacity standpoint, and that is Dodgers and Dodger Stadium, that their average per game attendance was larger than the capacity of every other stadium in the league. The development trends over the years have favored, having slightly smaller and more intimate environs, and that's going to continue with new ballparks that may be built, including with the Rays. And they're coming off winning the World Series last year. We've got Ohtani in the prime and all of the international attention he brings. And even though the Dodgers are going to continue to be a very strong draw and continue to lead the league every year for the reasons we just described, getting to this particular threshold, it's never happened. This is a new franchise record, and all the factors combining may not combine again, for a very long time, if ever.
Yeah, in the final 30 seconds, I'm curious, outside of the big-name teams in terms of payroll, there's also been big-name players that are not your usual suspects, Cal Raleigh being one of them. What are your thoughts on the historic season he's had so far and how it really helps boost Major League Baseball?
it's a huge story that the Mariners for a very long time have been sort of out of the league limelight, but he's already got a new record for most home runs in a season by a catcher, most home runs in a season by a Mariner, most home runs in a season by a switch hitter, and we might have the most home runs ever by an American League player. He might break Aaron Judge's record here with a final sprint here. It's going to be very exciting to watch.
Absolutely, and of course the Mariners can get a playoff spot with a win against Colorado on Tuesday. Eric Fisher, thank you as always.
Credit to the Giants, who were so good in April and then since then just kind of fell apart. Now they're back in it again. I don't. I think the Mets will get in. But it is fascinating that they'll play the Marlins here the last 3 games of the season. And I know without a doubt that the Marlins are going to line up Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, and their top guys to try and beat the Mets.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
It is the biggest story in sports. It is the ability to predict outcomes in sports without calling it sports betting. But I guess Massachusetts doesn't like it very much, and they're saying basically you can't operate in our market without having a license like FanDuel and DraftKings. And they're coming at this company, Robinhood, who you may be familiar with. Robinhood right now says, hey, we should be able to operate just like these other companies.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The biggest games, the biggest bets that you need to know. So much fun already, Joe. I feel like we got
having a good
lot
time.
of information
Love
now.
it. Yeah. Good games, not great, but again, it's college football. You can bet on them, nothing better.
Bet it, win. By the way, and I always like to say this, and it's true. Like, you can have the worst game in the world. You cash your ticket, it's like a Picasso. Like, that game was the best game I ever watched in my life.
Are you kidding?
Exactly.
Especially when you're hitting parlays.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. You can catch Adam Kaufman each and every Sunday for the late window covering the National Football League on In Game Live, along with Joe Ranieri, and of course sometimes filling in for me. So thanks to Adam for doing that here on NewsWire. Adam, great to catch up with you here and appreciate you coming on the show. And before we know it, we're going to have a game coming up here on Thursday night. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think that the line has changed. I think Arizona may have opened up as a favorite, and now maybe Seattle is. Or at least it was a pick 'em, but now Seattle up to -1.5 on the FanDuel Sportsbook, total of 43.5. Trying to figure out why this would have been the case. I mean, it can't just be James Conner. Is the other injuries involved with Arizona, or are they just down on them after the offensive performance last week against the 49ers?
Well, so you're absolutely right about the line movement. Seattle was a 2.5-point dog back at open, now 1.5-point favorite. We've also seen the total plummet, Craig, to 43.5 from 46.5. And that I find a little peculiar, only because Seattle is 2-1 to the over, Arizona is 2-1 to the under here in these games thus far. We're very early in the season, obviously. I just think that these two teams have both slightly underwhelmed. I know that's a weird thing to say about a pair of 2-1 teams, but this Arizona offense, whenever it's come alive or won games, it's been against far inferior competition, obviously. So I do think they're a deserving dog in this situation, the Cardinals, especially with the dropsies issue that Marvin Harrison Jr. has had. Kyler Murray has been unable to get on the same page with him. Now he continues to lean in on Trey McBride as a safety blanket. You mentioned, obviously, the lack of James Conner, and he's done for the rest of the year, so that opens up opportunity for Trey Benson, but not a real good running opportunity for him in this game anyway. It's not a great matchup. I think the line movement's right. I think you're kind of forced to look over toward the Seattle side of things. I certainly think the Seahawks, despite being the road team, are going to win this game. Look, it's a competitive division. Both these teams, along with what feels like everybody else, trying to make noise there in the NFC West right now. And look, all wins count the same. This is a great opportunity for either team, but in particular, I look at Seattle when you consider Sam Darnold has, generally speaking, been pretty good, at least leaning in on Jackson Smith and Jigba, who right now is playing like one of the best receivers in all of football, and that's in spite of the illness that he had pop up on the injury report just ahead of last week's game. Didn't even matter. Guy cleared his receiving yards prop in the first half of that game. You couple that with a capable run game, in Kenneth Walker, and I don't think it's a great run game by any means, but I think the passing game is really where Seattle can get you, and I like the Seahawks in this game.
I think that it's interesting because I wonder if Seattle only beat New Orleans by like 2 touchdowns, what this line would be. It feels like maybe a little overreaction to me with Seattle. Sam Darnold, by the way, fantastic when he plays indoors. 26 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 10-4 record. Now, a lot of those, of course, came last season with Minnesota, where he had such a great start to the season, but worth noting with Darnold there. Okay, Eagles take on the Buccaneers Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern. You got to make the Eagles favorite now in every game they play. They seem to be carrying around the magic beans right now, and not only do they do that, but they cover like that too. Eagles short favorites, 3.5. Tampa Bay total 44.5 in this game. And look, Eagles are not going to go 17-0. I mean, that goes without saying. Is this a trap spot for them, you think? Potentially. Adam, I know their offense hasn't completely gotten going, and they could have easily lost that game against the Rams, if not for a field goal or 2. But they are a tough team to bet against. I will say that.
Well, they've also been dealing with injuries. You're absolutely right when you say the offense has been a little slow to get going this year, but consider A.J. Brown was dealing with something the first couple weeks of the year, didn't finally come alive until week 3. Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert missed time. Saquon Barkley has been a little inconsistent, at least compared to everything that he was doing last year. And look, he was never going to rival the feats that he reached last season anyway. But in spite of it all, they are 3-0. And yes, they're on the road. And yeah, we've moved outside of a field goal at this point in time as far as the line -3.5, which always gives people pause. People see that hook and, you're almost inclined to go with the dog. The only reason I don't feel like it's a trap spot, Craig, is because Tampa Bay, for a couple things. One, there's no Mike Evans for the foreseeable future, certainly not this weekend. So you're taking away Baker Mayfield's number 1 target, as good as Emeka Egbuka, the rookie, has been, and as reliable as I think Cade Otton is capable of being when Baker Mayfield does lock in on him. We saw it at the end of last year, and there is the possibility Chris Godwin returns this weekend. Even if it does happen, who's to say what he looks like after missing so much time? So Mayfield is down some weapons, obviously. And on top of that, this team could be 0-3. That's the thing we're not talking about enough when it comes to Tampa Bay. And look, 3-0 is 3-0. That's great, but how'd you get there? Week 1, Younghoe Koo misses a field goal for Atlanta that would have tied the game, forced overtime, subsequent release after the fact. You win that game. And then back-to-back weeks, the last 2 weeks, stealing games in the final 2 minutes of those games, with credit Mayfield and that offense for electric drives to come up with those wins. But those are, somewhat fluky. You can't rely upon that happening every week. And now they've done it 2 weeks in a row. So any one of those 3 outcomes, if not all 3, could have flipped the other way. As it turns out, they've kind of had a horseshoe up their butts, and they're 3-0, and that's, again, great. But I don't think there's any argument that Philadelphia is the far superior team.
I would agree. Philly is definitely playing better football. And, it's a good point. Tampa Bay could have easily lost to Atlanta, and the Falcons do not look great at the moment. All right, let's go to what could be the game of the week in the NFL, although it does feature teams that are not winning as much as we thought. The Ravens and Kansas City Chiefs. And, Adam, when I look at this thing, I understand that the loser of this is probably on the outside looking in terms of odds for the playoffs. Usually teams that get off to a start, again, the loser of this game generally doesn't make it. But I look at the schedule that these teams have had between Baltimore and Kansas City, and I'm like, okay, it's going to get softer than what it's been. Super tough game to call for me here. Ravens a short favorite over the Chiefs. And, look, I think the Ravens obviously could have won last week if Derrick Henry doesn't fumble. The Chiefs are playing exactly how they were a year ago. They're just getting their 20 points and going home.
interesting game, compelling game. Look forward to watching it. Not entirely sure just yet how I'll bet it or if I'll bet it, Craig. You know, as you mentioned, these two teams are not playing particularly well. They're both 1-2 at this point. You know, the Ravens 0-1 on the road, the Chiefs 0-1 at home. We've seen line movement in this one as well. Baltimore was a 1.5-point dog at open, now a 2.5-point favorite. So still inside that field goal, albeit being on the road there at Arrowhead, which, as we know, is not an easy place to play. We always, for years we've been talking about, Patrick Mahomes against the spread numbers and all of that. Yeah, I read something earlier. How about this? Mahomes 11-2 straight up, 11-1-1 against the spread as an underdog from 2017 when he started games, at the beginning of his career, through 2023. But over the last 3 opportunities now, he is 1-2 ATS and straight up in this position. And so it's not as though Mahomes and company have been this sure favorite, in large part because for the last couple of seasons, the offense has been entirely unreliable for Kansas City. You want to point to the poor run game, Pacheco and Hunt. Kelsey's getting older. The injuries to obviously Rice, Worthy. Worthy may return this weekend from the shoulder, but he's been out since week 1. So once again, like we said with Godwin, who knows what he looks like if he does play. Tyquan Thornton's good for a long catch or two. Hollywood Brown is certainly serviceable, but it's kind of an offense that feels like it's in transition. Like, how much could they use a Tyreek Hill trade, for instance, from Milwaukee, a reunion, or Miami for a little reunion? As far as the Ravens go, Lamar Jackson, that offensive line's a problem. Guy was running for his life against Detroit, and I know the Lions have a good pass rush, and Chiefs do as well, but Lamar he has not been composed in the pocket. He's not been as fleet of foot as he would like to be reliably. And Derrick Henry, you talked about it, fumbles in every game so far, and two very costly ones in the fourth quarter that very well may have flipped the outcomes of those games. The Ravens could be sitting at 3-0 if not for those fumbles. And so, Baltimore's not playing at the level that most people would expect right now. It's a tough game to call.
Yeah, defensively also. But yeah, it seems like teams on the film are like, hey, we can punch the ball out of Derrick Henry's hands. I mean, there's no other explanation for it because it just keeps happening. All right, what we'll do is we'll take a quick timeout. Adam's going to stick around with us. We'll go over the odds to win the NFL MVP after the break.
Frank Reich is the head coach. You beat Stanford to end that season to clinch that 10th win, the hottest team in the country. You can't keep them out, Joe.
So now Stanford, because they beat Boston College last week, okay.
Notre Dame's in the top 25 today. They're going to have 10 straight victories. There's no way they stay out. Now, are you telling me that they're going to get tripped up by NC State?
NC State's
Devin
undefeated.
Leary still there? I don't even know.
NC State, Dave Torrance there.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Mike McDaniel got a personal victory.
Yeah, he get fired on the tarmac. Okay, I can
yeah.
go back. Yeah.
Well, this has been my take on the Dolphins. I think you'll agree. The more they lose, Tyreek Hill becomes the most important player in football. Because Tyreek Hill getting traded becomes likelier and likelier.
Yeah.
And Don, he's not going to get traded to the Cleveland Browns.
Correct.
This is a guy who's going to shift Super Bowl markets if he is dealt.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
NFL season with about 750,000 downloads. Really interesting when you look at the third and the fourth spot. You have Bet365 and Fanatics, which were, again, that first week, they were the only sports books that grew. The good news for the other sports books in terms of downloads this week is even when you take out Fanatics and Bet365, app downloads still grew about 20% across the board overall.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left, Donnie, for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Let's take a look at the odds to win the Rookie of the Year and the MVP and go through some of the latest movement in the National Football League. We got Adam Kaufman here from SportsGrid. Of course, you can catch Adam every Sunday, 4 o'clock Eastern, with Joe Ranieri going on with the late window in the NFL. Although this week, I don't know about that late window now that I think about it, because, Adam, I think we got a Sunday morning game. We got 2 Monday night games. I know we have a Sunday night game. So I hope you have at least 3 games on Sunday. Usually they give you at least 3, right? I think that's a good plan.
I think so. Yeah, maybe, who knows, something will hang over going to overtime off that early window. Give us a little bit more to talk about. But we'll have guests. We'll review what happened earlier. And like you said, we'll have 3 games to look forward to between Sunday and Monday. So we'll fill the time. We'll find a way. Yeah,
I'm gonna check the schedule here. I hate when they only have 3 games on Sunday. Let's see. This week it is 4. They have Jaguars, 49ers. Colts, Rams, Bears, Raiders, and then Chiefs, Ravens. That's the main one. So no, you guys, as long as you get 4, I think you're good. Yeah, you're good.
At least 2 good ones, and we'll see about the others.
Yeah, you never know. All right, to win the NFL MVP, the big mover for MVP is Justin Herbert. I mean, that's obvious. He was nowhere on the stratosphere. He's now 5-1. Everybody else is kind of the same. You've seen Mayfield jump up a little bit, Daniels fall down a little bit because of his injury, and the 2 favorites are still the 2 favorites. So for me, it's just whether or not you got Herbert at a better price, or if you think there's a better price to get at this point. But I mean, with the way Josh Allen plays and generally Lamar Jackson, it still does appear to be a 2-player race. The only thing, obviously, this is an injury league, Adam, and in the NFL, an injury that keeps you out 4 or 5 games, all of a sudden, those odds will shift.
The only 2 guys that jump out at me here, Craig, are neither of those 2 at the top. Josh Allen, who obviously won last year, Lamar Jackson has won before. I think that voter fatigue in the NFL is a real thing, because remember, this is not like an algorithm. It's not Vegas that decides who wins these things. These are humans, a committee of people that vote on these awards. And so you do kind of have to, we say it in gambling, handicap the handicappers. In this case, you got to handicap the voters a little bit. And we'll see as the season goes along, because we're only through 3 weeks. But the odds are just, there's no value whatsoever on either of these 2 guys. The expectation they continue to play well. You mentioned Justin Herbert, and certainly I missed the number overall, like going back to the offseason, but we started talking about him a couple of weeks ago here on these shows when it was plus 850, and there was still certainly some value in Herbert. I hope people invested in that when we were getting into it here on the grid. I think at 5-1, there's still some value. You start to sink below that, I wouldn't bother investing. I think sort of a sneaky dark horse here, though, Craig, that would interest me. Again, not a full unit player or anything like that, but maybe a little sprinkle. Baker Mayfield at 16-1. I mentioned, obviously, that this team has played with a bit of Chiefs last year like luck on their side with the way they've won these games and improving to 3-0 to date. If they continue to win games, not at the way that they've been winning them in the final moments, but just continue to win games. And this weekend is another one of those winnable games, as we discussed. You keep winning, Mike Evans comes back, Chris Godwin comes back. All of a sudden, we're looking at a Tampa Bay team that, I'm just putting it out there, wins 12, 13 games, runs away with its relatively poor division, and is right there, because obviously the voting happens at the end of the regular season. Doesn't matter what they do in the playoffs at that point. I think Baker Mayfield at this number at that point is a very realistic possibility for MVP, because you're not getting to 12, 13 wins without him.
Yeah, fair point. 16-1 right now. All right, so the Rookie of the Year still very much up in the air, and it's not that we've seen a big jump in the odds. We've seen a big fall in the odds, and that would be, Adam, for Ashton Genty of the Las Vegas Raiders, who was among the favorites to start the season and is not even on this board anymore. I talked about yesterday. I don't know, man. I'm a little concerned, even with the touches that he's getting. He just doesn't. I mean, I guess it's just not Boise State anymore. I don't know what else there is to say. But with Evans out, Igbuka certainly is in the mix heavily. Tyler Warren had a quiet week. I'm going to guess that won't happen a lot. And then Omarion Hampton is now a one-back guy. It could be in that offense. So I do think one of those 3 potentially wins it. But it is sort of stunning that here we are, Adam, a month into the season, and Genty was either the favorite or second. I mean, at least Cam Ward still shows up on the board there. And Genty's not even there anymore.
Yeah, Ward at plus 850, where I don't want to go, by the way. And interesting, if you're talking about quarterbacks, Jackson Dart all of a sudden, he hasn't even played really yet. Certainly hasn't started and has a better number than Cam Ward as, he prepares for his starting debut in the NFL for the Giants in place of Russell Wilson, who's been benched for, probably the rest of the season as long as Dart isn't terrible. And so, I think he'd be an interesting investment just because nobody expects the Giants to be good. But if Dart's going to get a season-long runway, and obviously with Malik Neighbors especially, he has more weapons to work with to inflate those numbers and is capable of winning more games than I would say Cam Ward for Tennessee, then, I think Dart is intriguing there. The guy that really jumps out at me, even though maybe Egbuka winds up winning it just because, again, he's going to be a focal point for the next little bit till Godwin is back in himself, till Evans returns, all of that. Mayfield's going to be leaning in on him. But again, you're talking about plus 360. So I think you've kind of missed the boat when it comes to that. I think the guy that jumps out here is Amarian Hampton. It's been a very slow start to the NFL career for him, obviously. But now, as you said, it's a one-back room. Najee Harris is done for the rest of the year. So as much as Hampton is underwhelmed to this point in time, he's getting all the runway now in this Harbaugh offense. And so I think he is going to start to put up some big numbers with this almost forced opportunity. That's a guy that I would be intrigued by at plus 650.
Yeah, the biggest surprise probably from them has been Keenan Allen. He's playing the number one wide receiver again in the NFL. And it was he was on the Bears last year. Yeah, it was crazy. Okay, so coach of the year, I still think to be determined. And look, they like to give this award to a team that was not really good last year and then is really good this year, if they can. That's what they would try to do. So that does fit the Shane Steichen narrative there. And then, of course, you have Harbaugh, you have Shanahan, Liam Cohen. I mean, they would love to give this to Steichen, right, Adam? Right? If they were to win 10 games, it's open and shut case, I think.
I think it comes down to who do you believe wins the AFC South? If you think it's the Colts, especially with the way they're going, yes, invest in Steichen, even at plus 380. If you like the Jaguars, I don't, but if you do, 10-1 for Liam Cohen's not a bad bet.
Yeah, I like the Jaguars too. Just wish they didn't give that game away a couple weeks ago. All right, Adam, good to see you. Thanks again.
Likewise.
Frank Reich is the head coach. You beat Stanford to end that season to clinch that 10th win, the hottest team in the country. You can't keep them out, Joe.
So now Stanford, because they beat Boston College last week, okay.
Notre Dame's in the top 25 today. They're going to have 10 straight victories. There's no way they stay out. Now, are you telling me that they're going to get tripped up by NC State?
NC State's
undefeated. Still there? I don't even know.
NC State, Dave Torrance there.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Mike McDaniel got a personal victory.
Yeah, he get fired on the tarmac. Okay, I can
go
back. Yeah.
Well, this has been my take on the Dolphins. I think you'll agree. The more they lose, Tyreek Hill becomes the most important player in football. Because Tyreek Hill getting traded becomes likelier and likelier.
Yeah.
And Don, he's not going to get traded to the Cleveland Browns.
Correct.
This is a guy who's going to shift Super Bowl markets if he is dealt.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
NFL season with about 750,000 downloads. Really interesting when you look at the third and the fourth spot. You have Bet365 and Fanatics, which were, again, that first week, they were the only sports books that grew. The good news for the other sports books in terms of downloads this week is even when you take out Fanatics and Bet365, app downloads still grew about 20% across the board overall.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
They had clearly in hand at the end, especially in the second half, and yet somehow they managed a shank of a 60-yard field goal, and a flag comes in with no time left on it for a penalty. Do you want to know how many times that penalty of leverage was called all last season? Want to take a guess?
How many?
4.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on Sports Grid. The Mets didn't do anybody else a favor yesterday by actually winning, but a sports bar in Chicago thought they would take their shot at them. Also, Ryder Cup getting ready to get underway. They had their dinner last night, and one side looked a little bit different than the other. Also, a side bet looks like being made by Jake Paul and his upcoming fight against Gervonta Davis. We'll have that and a whole lot more in this edition of Last Licks. Well, maybe this is what will get the Mets going and get them into the postseason. I'm not really sure. But yesterday, the Chicago Cubs took on the New York Mets. The Cubs are already in baseball's postseason. The Mets should have been in weeks ago, but they just keep losing games. So yesterday, in a funny little quip, Murphy's Bleacher Bar, which is right next to Wrigley Field, had a sign that they posted that said, "Come see New York's version of the White Sox." Wow, shots fired yesterday, and the timing couldn't have been any better, of course, because the Cubs are playing a 3-game set against the New York Mets. But I don't know, maybe something like this ended up sparking the Mets a little bit. The Cubs went up 6-1 in this game after 2 innings, and the Mets stormed all the way back to tie it at 6. They took a lead 7-6. The Cubs tied it up, and then Francisco Alvarez hit a home run, and the Mets end up winning. And New York, by the way, maybe considered that. They're spending more, by the way, than the New York Yankees. So I'm not sure that this is an apples to apples comparison. The Mets have a payroll over $300 million. But this is the kind of stuff maybe that can motivate them. I don't know. We will see. Mets will close out their series against the Cubs this week, and then they will travel to Miami, where they're going to need to win, I would guess, probably 2 or maybe all of the games this weekend to stay ahead of the pace and capture that final wild card in the National League. You know what else is coming up this weekend? You got college football, you got pro football, so many things happening right now. It's hard to keep up. But the Ryder Cup is one of the biggest events in golf, and it's coming up this weekend. In fact, the practice rounds begin today and tomorrow for the Ryder Cup, and then this weekend they will play it out. The United States versus Europe. Of course, that's the way that this is done. And so I guess, and I was not aware of this, they have an annual dinner that they show up to every single year. And in fact, generally speaking, apparently, it is a formal dinner where you're supposed to wear a suit or a jacket, pair of pants, pair of nice shoes. And that's exactly what Team Europe ended up doing. But all of a sudden, social media is abuzz because Team USA and everybody who's on it decided to wear like shorts and sneakers to the dinner and to try and go the other direction, to try and spark some victories, I guess, against Team Europe. That did not sit well with the committee and also the folks who were playing on the side of Team Europe as well. So with the Ryder Cup getting underway this week, there's some more controversy, as if we needed any more. I would say that this probably is much ado about nothing, but it just goes to show you that Team USA is taking things very lightly going into their final match. All right, another fight with one of the Paul brothers coming up. Jake Paul's going to fight Gervonta Davis a little bit later this year. They had a couple of press conferences. They had one in New York. They had one in Miami. And they've decided to up the stakes here a little bit between Jake and Tank. And what they're going to do is basically decide as to whether or not the fight is worth the millions of dollars they're going to get paid in advance by having a side bet of $2 million. That is correct. These two fighters decided and shook hands that the winner of the fight will get $2 million. Now, will one pay up over the other? I have no idea. They're already going to make several $1 million for this fight. Also, keep in mind, Davis, 130, 140 pounds. Paul, close to 200 pounds. They can't even decide on which boxing gloves that they're supposed to use because when you move up in weight, you're supposed to use different gloves. But they'll try and do this in this day and age of boxing. This is the best almost that we have to offer. Kind of sad. But $2 million side bet. We'll see if the winner pays up or not. All right, that'll do it for our show today here on NewsWire. Thanks again to our great guests here on the program, including Michael DeCourcy of Sporting News, Sam McQuillan of Legal Sports Report, Simon Applebaum of the podcast will be tomorrow will be televised, and also Mike Blewett as well. He was not on the show. Mike Blewett was there. Why you put Mike Blewett in there? He was not on our show. Adam Kaufman for coming on the show. Thanks to Adam. I pulled a Ron Burgundy there on the show today. Read what I saw. Also want to download the SportsGrid app. Just take out your phone and you can scan this QR code. It's available on both iOS and Android and gets you all set for your bets this weekend. In fact, for those of you who bet on sports, whether it's college football or pro football, and you want a better way of tracking your bets, the SportsGrid app will do that for you. Also gives you an idea as to where you can catch all of our shows including in-game live game time decisions, NewsWire, and of course the Craig Carton Show, which you can catch every single day exclusively here on SportsGrid at 11 a.m. Eastern. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again to Luke, and for Frank, I'm Craig. See you back here for the NFL's return tomorrow night. We'll preview Seattle and Arizona tomorrow. Have a great day.